Yo, what's good? We're back with another one.
It's showtime.
Idiocracy follows Joe Bowers, an average army librarian who gets chosen for a year-long hibernation experiment along with streetwalker Rita. Things don't go as planned, and the pair wake up 500 years later to find themselves in a garbage-filled wasteland where everyone is an imbecile.
I'll base your ass on my face.
After an IQ test renders Joe the smartest man alive, he's tasked with solving a famine caused by crops being irrigated with a sports drink called Brondo. When Joe recommends replacing Brondo with water, the economy tanks and Joe is sentenced to a gladiatorial rehabilitation in a monster truck coliseum. With the help of Rita and his lawyer Frito, Joe proves the water is working seconds before his execution. He's pardoned, hailed as a hero, and realizing he can't return to his time, decides to settle down with Rita and succeed Camacho as president. As the new executive, he calls for the people to embrace smart stuff like books, and eventually to figure things out for themselves. The end.
I remember this film. It's a classic.
It's becoming reality, bro.
Upon its release in 2006, Idiocracy gives us a glimpse into what the United States might look like in 2505. At the time, audiences saw this movie as nothing more than a cutting satire, criticizing the trajectory the country was on. But now, nearly 2 decades later, with that trajectory becoming steeper and steeper, we can now see that Idiocracy was more than just satire. Towards the beginning of the movie, we get a basic explanation as to how human evolution has led us to this point.
Having kids is such an important decision.
We're just waiting for the right time. It's not something you want to rush into.
The narrator explains that unfavorable economic conditions, social unrest, and the looming threat of global warming have discouraged the smartest of us from reproducing. And meanwhile, the dumbest people aren't considering such factors and are more willing to partake in adultery with multiple partners.
I'm gonna fuck all y'all! That's my boy!
Meaning they're reproducing at an exponential rate. This dichotomy repeated for years, meaning intelligence is passed on to offspring less and less until it's completely phased out, which ultimately leads us to the society Idiocracy shows in its version of 2505. But replacing Brondo with water on such a large scale causes the company's stocks to tank, meaning the company lays off 75% of its workforce overnight, which at this point is 75% of their entire population. This results in mass riots at the capital and a call for Joe to be sentenced to death. The masses are willing to kill the only man who can save them from starvation in order to preserve their corporate overlords.
Does seem like society's going downhill.
It's because it is, bro.
Every television show is framed with a collage of advertisements. Clothing is plastered with logos. Even the President's State of the Union address has a backdrop marketing soda and credit card companies. The hospitals, prisons, schools, all littered with corporate propaganda. In Idiocracy's version of the future, you have no choice but to give these companies your constant attention and buy their products. In this future, fast food and energy drink companies have effectively normalized themselves to the point where nobody questions why one company provides them with the housing, food, and even medicine. Some even praise these companies for the services they provide. And our current world is just so much closer to this than you think. Advertisements are becoming more intrusive by the day, and most of us just accept it. The news articles, streaming services, public transportation, hospitals, university campuses that were all once relatively ad-free are now constantly familiarizing us with various brands and products. And as a result, major corporations continue to grow and monopolize. We're now at a point where major companies like Coca-Cola, Nestle, Amazon, and Disney own almost everything you consume on a daily basis. It's basically impossible to avoid all of this, as they actually own all the perceived competition. And because they have so much influence in our society and culture, the government is forced to cooperate with them. Even when regulations are in place, these now massive companies can use their infinite funds to buy the influence of public officials, influencers, and the regulators themselves. And in turn, they can ravage our national resources, destroy our culture and society, and commodify our primal desires at the expense of our souls.
I remember watching this film. At the time, it seemed so ridiculous.
Not anymore, bro.
South by Southwest last year, Terry Crews even revived the character President Dwayne Elizondo Mountain Dew Herbert Camacho to launch a satirical run for the Oval Office in 2024.
The future is
While it's kinda soul-crushing that I'll never see an actual Camacho ticket,
and today I'm about to Mountain Dew.
I rewatched the film recently, and not only is it still funny, but it is a disturbingly prescient reflection of our current reality. So let's just briefly go over the origins of the Idiocracy. According to the film, society slowly devolved because basically all of the dumb hillbillies thoughtlessly procreated, while all the smart people abstained to focus instead on their careers, leading to a proliferation of morons. In 1892, Nordau published a book called Degeneration, in which he claimed that certain cultural movements were causing people to abandon rational thought and moral standards, creating an increasingly emotionally driven population. The embrace of these cultures could become pathologies that are then biologically inherited. In Idiocracy, we basically see redneck culture producing people who are so emotionally determined that they succumb to their base impulses and breed recklessly, leading to more who do the same. Importantly though, the decadent culture Nordau criticized was more modern artists like Edvard Munch and less trailer parks and dudes named Bubba. Nordau's theories were very flawed. There was no scientific basis for degeneration, and his legacy is largely that of a crotchety reactionary who just didn't like change.
You can't be just getting old and not liking change. It really seems like intelligence is on the decline.
It's social media, bro.
But what does this say about us? Critics of Idiocracy suggest that by using this logic, the film is advocating for eugenics, or some sort of systematic planned breeding of society's smartest individuals. But this is really just a simple visual and comedic way of getting the audience on board with the premise. What the film spends the rest of its runtime trying to tell us is that the problem is environmental. The issue lies within our system, a system that constantly rewards us for dumbing ourselves down and engaging in false desires. Just look at the first thing Joe sees when he wakes up in the future. He sees content, and not just any content. He sees content that appeals to the lowest common denominator, depicting a man getting repeatedly hit in the balls. No story, no lols, just all action and humor that everyone can easily understand. A constant dopamine rush by design. And this is a common theme throughout the movie. We see a network dedicated to masturbation, a sensationalist news conglomerate that favors entertainment over truth, televised criminal trials in the form of monster truck rallies, political speeches straight out of WWE.
Now, I understand everyone's shit's emotional right now, but listen up.
It's all built to cater towards our increasingly low attention spans and tickle the most primitive parts of the brain. And it probably sounds very familiar to us, because a short scroll through YouTube, TikTok, or even Netflix's original content will show you we're already embarking on this path, and we have been for quite some time.
It's worrying how accurate this film actually was.
Loads of films have predicted the future, bro.
Movies like Minority Report envisioned a machine that would predict crime, and today we have Face IDs that track you. The Truman Show predicted a reality show takeover in a weird fetishization of being obsessed with someone else's life. It's pretty obvious if you look around that we're living in pretty much that. Hell, someone just got rich and famous for joking about spitting on someone's.
What's one move in bed that makes a man go crazy every time?
Oh, you gotta give him that hawk and spit on that thing, you get me? Hawk and spit on it, spit on it!
Idiocracy, however, might be more predictive than both of these movies combined. Idiocracy makes economic, political, and cultural predictions that would make George Orwell roll over in his grave. These are macro trends that will permeate the world for years to come, especially these new trends that are flooding our dopamine receptors just to sweep us all away. Of course they want Idiocracy because the dumber and more impulsive you are, the more of a herd animal that they can tax and pawn cheap credit on.
Welcome to Costco. I love you. Welcome to Costco. I love you.
Truth be told, Idiocracy is a utopia compared to what is coming. With that said, here are the predictions from the film you should be the most worried about. The English language has deteriorated into inner city slang and various grunts. In the future in Idiocracy, the English language deteriorates into a hybrid of hillbilly, valley girl, and inner city slang, and also various grunts. It's sort of like a Migos song or an episode of Jersey Shore. Look around you. We don't speak English anymore. We speak American. The once respected Oxford English Dictionary now reads like messages between middle schoolers with new words like frenemy, staycation, frankenfood, worstus, and hangry. And this isn't to be an old man waving our fists at the sky. There's actual data to support that our verbal and total IQ scores are going down. According to the data from the Journal of Intelligence, IQ rates have been dropping since 1995. Simple reaction time, considered an essential factor that directly affects our general intelligence, has slowed significantly since 1889. And compounding this is smart people are having fewer and fewer kids, if none at all. Sure, language evolves, but don't mistake every new word as a step up. Evolution isn't always a progress. Case in point, Idiocracy and the word tarded.
Don't worry, Scrub. Now there are plenty of tards out there living really kick-ass lives. My first wife was tarded. She's a pilot now.
From the common sense materialism perspective, a lot of this has happened because we ignore problems in the current age, hoping that they will go away. There's an objective world out there, independent of your consciousness, and things you don't like won't go away just because you stop paying attention to them.
No one wants to have difficult conversations these days.
And this break will be lucky if it turns out like Idiocracy, bro.
There's a whole quadrant of hateful stupid that's completely absent from Idiocracy. In fact, there's a black president in the movie, and it's never once mentioned. He rides in an open-air motorcade through city streets, throws parties for everyone on the lawn of the White House. Everyone's invited, and he never once worries about the possibility of assassination. There's a female attorney general, and people listen to her. They respect her opinions. I mean, that doesn't seem that remarkable, but keep in mind that we've only ever had 2 female attorney generals in all of American history, and each one of them dealt with pretty much nonstop complaints that a woman shouldn't have that job. Except in the case of Janarino, when people just accused her of being a man in a dress. Everyone in Idiocracy, it turns out, is pretty open-minded, aside from the fact that sometimes they call stuff faggy if it's too smart for them. But that's all because of one very important fact. The stupid people in the movie know they're stupid. Could you even imagine a world in which idiots knew that they were idiots? What a magical fucking utopia. How do we get that now? Luke Wilson's character has to take an intelligence test when he's sent to future prison to determine what type of job best suits him while incarcerated. Already, I should point out, not a bad idea for prisons. His intelligence, it turns out, is off the charts by future America standards, and so he immediately lands a job at the White House because everyone in America wants the smartest people tackling the country's biggest problems. Just think about that for a minute. You live in a world occupied by people who vote for their president based on who they could see themselves having a beer with. And in the apocalyptic future of Idiocracy, what they want above all else in their leaders is intelligence. And the system works.
It's a good point.
Yeah, bro. We're in trouble.
I watched Idiocracy this morning.
Oh, boy.
Dude, it fucking holds up. It holds up.
Does it? Okay.
Oh my God, it's funny.
It's nice.
I never saw the whole thing before. It was one of those movies that I just, for whatever reason, I just never saw the whole thing. It was just...
Well, it kind of, yeah, it didn't have much of a release, so...
It didn't?
No, it was, I mean, to be fair, like, it was a weird movie. It was hard to market.
It's a funny fucking movie, man.
Oh,
it's
thanks.
funny. I mean, I watched it in the gym while I was working out. I was cracking up.
Oh, nice to hear.
It was really good. It was like surprisingly funny. There was some great stuff about it. When when it shows the very smart couple that's holding off on having children, and the dumb people keep fucking.
Yeah, that was, I feel like I really made the whole movie just to make that sequence. That was one of those rare times. Patrick and Darlene, the 2 actors, that was the only time I think this has ever happened. I think they were auditioning them in pairs, and they auditioned, and I kind of looked at like 2 or 3 more people and then said, okay, let's just cast them. It's never going to get better. That guy was so good, Patrick Fisher, yeah.
It was such a good movie, man. It's just like...
Thanks.
And it's so interesting, like, looking at the world in 2022. It's like, the only thing you missed was social media.
It probably would have made it worse if they knew social media was coming.
Fox tried to tank the release, bro.
Idiocracy was released by Fox, who by all accounts is one of the main corporations the movie seeks to take down with its satire. Why would Fox release a film that directly threatens their perception by the public? Well, the truth is, they did everything they could to destroy this movie. Idiocracy was originally meant to be released in August of 2005, but was put on indefinite hold by Fox until its final release date over a year later, and upon its release, it was only shown in 7 US cities. Fox was also completely absent in promoting the movie, and while no official comment was given, there was speculation that Fox was unhappy with how the film's message might play to its advertisers and were effectively trying to keep it from being seen by a larger audience.
For whatever reason, I just never saw the whole thing. It was just...
Well, it kind of, yeah, it didn't have much of a release, so everything that went wrong. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. Like,
the film wasn't even screened for critics, and so many have speculated that the sole reason for the film's survival was that Fox had a pre-existing extremely lucrative relationship with the movie's creator, Mike Judge. It wasn't until 2018 that someone on the inside, actor Terry Crews, spoke about the film's bizarrely hamstrung release, more or less confirming all of the speculation. Crews actually had this to say: "The rumor was because we used real corporations in our comedy, these companies gave us their name, thinking they were going to get pumped up, and then we're like, welcome to Costco, we love you." And all these real corporations were like, wait a minute. There were a lot of people trying to back out, but it was too late. And so Fox, who owned the movie, decided, we're going to release this in as few theaters as legally possible. So it did get a release, probably 3 theaters over one weekend, and it was sucked out into the vortex, making only $400,000 at the box office, making sure none of America saw this movie. So the fact that a film like Idiocracy even saw the light of day is something of a miracle.
Yeah, no one takes any risks with films anymore.
Corporations won't let them.
It becomes apparent with a closer look at the American Diabetes Association, the American Cancer Society, the American Heart Association, and the Susan G. Komen Foundation. You'll see that they're accepting millions of dollars in funding from companies like Kraft, Taco Bell, and KFC, in addition to massive pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson. So when we look at the leading companies that make food, the non-profits meant to educate the population on nutritional intake and disease, and the corporations that develop drugs to treat illnesses, they all have a vested interest in maintaining an unhealthy population. That's why almost everyone around you is so unhealthy these days, and it's a very vicious cycle. And I'm not saying these corporations want to deliberately destroy humanity. Instead, they want to nudge us into addiction, push us into a situation where we must do everything we can to survive, giving more and more of our power away to the worst among us, then capitalizing on this desperation, the natural human instinct to survive, by selling us the solutions to our struggles.
Society needs to make a drastic change.
AI is not going to help, bro.
Even our ability to think critically and solve problems is now under siege, thanks to the advent of generative tools. Picture a Roman archway, stones on top of stones, but it never stands free or supports any weight at all without something called a keystone. The keystone is the pinnacle of that archway. It often has a slightly different shape, or it's measurably larger, while dispersing the most weight in the process, therefore supporting the entire archway as a whole. And critical thinking is the keystone of human cognition. Spell checkers and GPS programs, they're just stones, one of many in the archway. But generative tools, according to new data from researchers directly at Microsoft, if used improperly can, quote, result in the deterioration of cognitive faculties that ought to be preserved. As Bainbridge noted, a key irony of automation is that by mechanizing routine tasks and leaving exception handling to the human user, you deprive the user of the routine opportunities to practice their judgment and strengthen their cognitive musculature, leaving them atrophied and unprepared when the exceptions do arise, end quote. While Gen AI can improve worker efficiency, it can inhibit critical engagement with work and can potentially lead to long-term over-reliance on the tool and diminished skill for independent problem solving, end quote. It's a lot to get through, I know, and some people may laugh it off as overly dramatized, but the keystone, the one supporting all the extra weight, is the thing that supplants our own thinking, and that is precisely what these new AI tools are designed to do.
Yeah, I don't know, it's arguable. People said the same thing about the internet.
They were right, bro. Go check out our episode on the dead internet theory, bro.
Google, which obviously has their own AI model called Gemini, somewhat recently began heavily marketing that program to a much wider audience using material like this. It's a pretty harmless video at first, but towards the end you start to see something a little bit different than generate a funny image of a cat playing guitar, because they start advertising the service for things like generating emails. Cool, no big deal you might say. Small stone in the massive archway. But then they cut to a scene where a teenage girl is asking this program, right in front of her friends, what's a good excuse to cancel dinner with my friends? You can certainly shrug it off as a goofy advertisement, but what happens when you actively market a product to teenagers, showcasing it as some sort of solution to feeling awkward, or even something that replaces basic interactions with friends? Ask the AI what to say to your friends instead of actually talking to your friends. Social aptitude is a skill set, and using this kind of tool to replace that, which was already replaced once by texting, as opposed to actually speaking to people, is one step further removed from using the muscle itself, which leads inexorably to atrophy. We're not just hindering the act of critical thinking, we're outright replacing it, which may not be quite as comedic when compared to a movie like Idiocracy, but the end result, beyond the jokes, the humor, and the absurd over-exaggerations, the end result is a society that can't think for itself. therefore spiraling downwards. It's funny because people hand-wave all of this often as nothing. They say technology makes us smarter, but it's getting harder and harder for me to see it that way.
It's true. The younger generation are going to rely on AI for everything.
Even lawyers are using it, bro.
If you want a much smaller but far more damning example of this in action, especially considering the warning that Microsoft researchers themselves gave in that document, right, regarding legal documents in particular, there was a case against Walmart initiated in 2023 and still making its way through the court system, where the legal representation for the plaintiff used 8 different case law examples that just don't exist because an AI hallucinated them. In a statement provided to the court directly, the law firm said, quote, "Our internal artificial intelligence platform hallucinated the cases in question while assisting our attorney in drafting the motion in limine. This matter comes with great embarrassment and has prompted discussion and action regarding the training, implementation, and future use of artificial intelligence within our firm. This serves as a cautionary tale for our firm and all firms as we enter this new age of artificial intelligence," end quote. Yeah, sure, and people instinctively making the argument that this won't be a problem once the AI is good enough might have a point. Maybe it won't be a problem, but think of it this way. That's a lawyer, supposedly one of the smartest professions on earth if you ask everyday people. That's a lawyer who was having the AI do their work for them.
They didn't even proofread it, bro.
What's worse is they probably did. They just didn't know the law well enough to spot that the AI got it wrong.
People don't want to learn anymore. Kids just watch trash content, bro.
Humor that appeals to everybody while criticizing nobody, designed to reach the widest audience possible, delivering empty platitudes. And this approach is rewarded handsomely. Views go up as even the smartest of us can't help but go back for one more injection of dopamine. Meanwhile, the less instantaneously rewarding content gets lost. Creators and corporations alike begin chasing eyeballs by applying the same methods. YouTube becomes filled with Mr. Beast clones.
I hired 50 Spider-Man to find out what it's like to be a crime-fighting superhero. Ever since I was a kid, I've always wanted to feel what it's like to fight supervillains and save the day.
TikTok becomes filled with vandalism, public humiliation, and even sex. Our news has even become entertainment. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that the faces of this movement are rewarded with immense wealth and fame. And at the same time, essential workers are underpaid and disrespected. Teachers struggle to afford their basic needs. Doctors and lawyers are required to take on immense debt with predatory interest rates. So where's the incentive for young people to pursue a career where they meaningfully contribute to society? The truth is, it's gone. From a survey of 3,000 children in 2019, it was determined that over 71% of children in the United States want to be some form of an entertainer when they grow up. Either a YouTuber, musician, or a professional athlete. Meanwhile, in China, over 50% of children want to become an astronaut or a teacher or an engineer. And it comes down to incentives. Because if you're a child in the United States, you're constantly being exposed to celebrity, usually in the form of entertainers who seemingly put in minimal effort and reap maximum rewards relative to the rest of us. There's no mystery why children would desire to abandon their pursuit of the steep and arduous ladder of the higher education system, or even physically skilled labor, in favor of something exponentially more lucrative. And this is a clear reason for society getting progressively dumber, just like in Idiocracy.
Numbers don't lie, bro.
Yeah, it's concerning. Seems like the internet's raising kids more than their parents.
There has been a gigantic increase in depression and anxiety for American teenagers, which began right around between 2011 and 2013. The number of teenage girls out of 100,000 in this country who are admitted to a hospital every year because they themselves or otherwise harmed them. That number was pretty stable until around 2010, 2011, and then it begins going way up. It's up 62% for older teen girls. It's up 189% for the preteen girls. That's nearly triple. Even more horrifying, we see the same pattern with suicide. The older teen girls, 15 to 19 years old, they're up 70% compared to the first decade of the century. The preteen girls, who have very low rates to begin with, they are up 151%. And that pattern points to social media. Gen Z, the kids born after 1996 or so, those kids are the first generation in history that got on social media in middle school. How do they spend their time? They come home from school and they're on their devices. A whole generation is more anxious, more fragile, more depressed. They're much less comfortable taking risks. The rates at which they get driver's licenses have been dropping. The number who have ever gone out on a date or had any kind of romantic interaction is dropping rapidly. This is a real change in a generation. And remember, for every one of these, for every hospital admission, there's a family that is traumatized and horrified. My God, what is happening to our kids?
People need to connect with their kids, bro.
There's a new Netflix series called Adolescence. It's a must watch, especially if you're a parent.
I got to talk about Adolescence, please. It came out last week. It's been #1 ever since. People on social media are calling you the greatest British actor of all time, by the way. Yeah, plug your ears. Yeah, sorry. You also co-wrote the series.
Yeah.
How do we set up what this is about?
It's the story of a young boy who's convicted of a murder. It's a young boy who a young girl. I'm not doing any spoilers because we found out straight away, and as a collective, we didn't want it to be a whodunit. We wanted it to be more of a why he did it. Do you know what I mean? So what we kind of did was, I read an article in the paper. It was about a young boy who shot a young girl to death, and then there was a couple of months later on the news there was a piece about a young boy who shot a young girl to death, and these were at opposite ends of the country. And I just, if I'm really honest with you, Jim, I just, it hurt my heart. And I just think, what kind of a society we're living in at the moment where young boys are stabbing young girls. And that beautiful saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I just thought, what if we're all kind of accountable? The education system, parenting, the community, the government. And also, when we were kids, we didn't have social media. So if we were in our rooms, when we were kids, we were either playing out in the streets, weren't we? Or we were in our rooms, drawing pictures or playing keyboards or something. We didn't have the accessibility to all of this stuff in the world that really influences young minds. And I wanted to take a look at it. I'm not blaming anyone. I just thought maybe we're all accountable and we should, have a conversation about it.
Yeah, oh my gosh, it's really great. You're right. Sorry.
It's a heavy subject.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that we need to look at.
Yeah.
As a society, basically.
It's a powerful series, bro.
These days it's so easy for young people to be radicalized. It can happen right under your nose.
Although the average human IQ has risen dramatically over the past century, it's been dropping steadily over recent decades. And it's not down to genetics or the idea that dumb people are reproducing at a higher rate than smart people. Researchers are actually finding that the same cognitive differences between generations within the greater population are prevalent within members of the same family. So the evidence supports the theory that this decline in collective IQ is completely tied to the environment our society is creating around us. So what can we do to change this environment, to alter this hopeless trajectory we're on, to avoid full-on idiocracy becoming our reality? Well, Joe actually tells us in a single moment of self-reflection from the movie. Joe realizes at this moment that it wasn't just the dumbest of us contributing to society's downfall, it was everyone else who sat back and did nothing while we were spiraling towards the gutter. It was those of us who actively avoided the opportunity to lead in the face of crisis and decided to follow instead.
People wrote books and movies that had stories, so you cared whose ass it was and why it was farting, and I believe that time can come again.
Or worse, those of us who recognized the incoming disaster and simply chose to get out of the way. So find some time to do something today. Step away from the hamster wheel of dopamine and consumption that even the best and smartest of all of us fall victim to daily. Even if we can take just 30 minutes out of our day to enjoy a walk with no distractions, look at the trees, breathe in the fresh air, and learn more about the world, maybe then we can avoid the dystopian future Idiocracy predicts.
There's still hope for humanity, bro. But we'll have to save that for next time.
Oh, that time we've got to do the giveaway.
Leave a comment on this video for a chance to win in our next episode. Let's do this, bro.
Bang bang!
Blah, blah.
Pick something from our merch store and we'll send it straight out.
Check out JDO. He wore one of our shirts at a Comic-Con event, bro.
Yeah, that's amazing. A big thanks to everyone buying the merch and all our new channel members.
Members get an extra episode every week, bro.
If you haven't joined the Discord yet, there's a link in the description.
The Discord's free, bro. Come say hi.
And as always, thanks for watching. Remember to like, comment and subscribe. and we'll see you in the next one.